Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about Warrior from Path of Exile 2 and why they're basically creatively bankrupt. There are very little choices offered left to Warrior due to some balance concerns or some other issues I'll be getting into over the course of this video. So have you seen this pathing on the passive skill tree node? Have you seen this pathing? Yes, you have. You've seen this pathing, or you've seen a variation of this pathing. Basically every single warrior is doing it. Have you seen items with these stats? Yes, you have. Basically every single warrior is using these exact same stats on all their items. It is boring. There are no choices left to it. As with all my videos, I want to be going over and emphasizing this topic a lot. I've wrote something here that I'm going to go over during the course of this video. I'll be showing you in game what I mean as best as I can, but I don't like squishing my videos down. I don't like just trying to quickly rush over a few topics and not cover them very well. So I will be using all the time I can. I won't be wasting your time. I will be going over this as quickly as I can, but I still need to go over it as best I can. Warrior is a very boring class, and that needs to change. Warriors have almost no creativity allowed to them by poor design choices or balance, either in how they itemize or in how they use their passive tree. That's basically what I want to go over here. So as always, it helps for your retention if you guys, just use me as a podcast, put me in your second monitor. You can watch along and you can stare at this all you want. That's fine too. I won't make this boring for you, but you don't need to stare here until you quit off. And then, well, yeah. As always, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. I do like going more deep dive into game design and things like that. So here we go. I'm not trying to complain that Warrior is weak, but rather aim my complaints at the fact that every single Warrior is using almost the same passive tree path and the exact same itemization choices if they are doing an attack build. This is boring. I want to go over why this is happening. The developers have said the passive tree will see very large changes over early access. And that I want to emphasize, of course, is that the developers have said that the passive tree will be seeing a lot of changes. So there's definitely some time here for my complaints and complaints that I could make to reach the developers and maybe for them to make some improvements. You might see Kitty has a new cat pole. That's the box for the cat pole. She is playing in the box. I hate moving the boxes that she likes playing in. She enjoys her toys. You can see her toys everywhere. I like saying that because otherwise you guys constantly, well, say, why are there boxes? There's boxes for Kitty. She likes playing in them. Okay. Since launch, we've unfortunately had to nerf a few skills that were far too overpowered. How we define overpowered? Basically, it's a situation in which a certain skill is so powerful that players feel no other method of playing the game is viable. That's a quote from the developers. I do not believe these warrior choices are overpowered, but rather to extrapolate from their quote an idea, there is a clear balance issue here where non-meta choices are so weak that there's no way to reasonably play warrior viably with non-meta choices. To immediately address comments I know people will leave, I know you can eventually brute force any build to be viable. Let's not be petty and actually be intellectually honest here. The top end warrior builds do not feel strong enough even if other classes didn't exist. Therefore, the lower than top builds do not feel viable. Now, I do, of course, want to agree that yes, you could brute force items onto any class and you could brute force items onto basically any build and you could eventually beat the entire game and maybe even get to the +4 zest and things like that. What I do mean is that your average player playing with average items slowly creeping up and getting bad items to average items to good items, maybe not to the literal best items, but to pretty good items, those warriors will feel extremely weak if they're not playing the meta build. I also want to say that if they are playing these meta strategies, this meta pathing and using these meta items, that even if they are doing that, they will feel weaker than, well, I think is reasonable right now. Okay, so why is that? Warrior never gets enough life to be tanky, meaning all they can do is continue to stack life and strength on every item. There's very little strength on the passive tree, so there's very little flat life on the passive tree. As strength is flat life, there's no flat life on the passive tree. The only amount of flat life you get is from strength. Since there's very little strength, there's very little flat life. Does everybody get that? Okay. This means base life in the game for warriors is very low. Therefore, the difference in health from a single item with health and one without health is massive. This means warriors cannot use any item without large life and strength, as that will make them easily within one-shot territory. Even taking a single life item with subpar life and strength will leave them getting one-shot. So to put this idea into here, because there's so little life on the passive tree and because the base life in the game is so low, it means going with a single item that does not have life and does not have strength will leave you massively far behind other classes. So for me, I'm pretty much using extraordinarily good items with basically the top end everything. We get strength life here, 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 we have life and percent life here. On this ring, you'll never believe it, strength life. On this ring, you'll never believe it, strength life. I did not get life on my shield though. Unfortunate that one, because I didn't get life on my shield, whereas shields could have a lot of life on them. I am potentially up to 300 life behind where I should be. To put this into another perspective, I currently have 6,186 life. If I was to merely buy a cheaper glove and try to find cheaper gloves, I would be down nearly 600 life. So, suffice it to say, this is not really a tenable situation for warriors. They need to continue to stack life the entire game because the amount of damage enemies do scales so much higher than the amount of HP that you can get that you're always in this arms race with enemies where you're always trying to get more life to not get one shot, but the enemies will always be one-shotting you harder and harder and harder. This is just an arms race in which warriors are losing. Taking a single item out of the equation will push you rapidly back into one-shot territory, meaning you have to get strength and life on every single item. Since all warrior gear needs life and strength on it, the amount of actually usable gear dropping for warrior is terribly low, meaning finding gear upgrades is extremely difficult. Warrior gear by default has only like a 1 in 20 chance of getting life and strength on it in good amounts, so only 1 in 20 items that drop will even have the chance of being useful. This doesn't even factor in the need for elemental resistances, chaos resistances, and armor. Since all warriors will, obviously, be going for these few items that roll well, the demand far exceeds the supply, increasing costs in the marketplace dramatically. Now I just want to go to this marketplace right now. If I wanted to find an expert steel plate with chaos resist, or really any armor with chaos resist, I would have to go here. So I want to find chaos resist at an amount of 20. As of right now, the amount of armor in the entire marketplace that has rolled a decent 199 life, 29 strength, and 20 chaos resist in the entire marketplace, getting at least 1,000 armor, which would be the bare minimum of armor needed to let armor be good. There are 9 choices. There's only one choice below a divine, and it's 25 exalted, so this could do good. The armor is quite low for a Valkyros, though, so this item might be good at first, but item level 82 means that you cannot use this to grind maps with. If you're using this item at tier 15s, you will die horribly. If we look at the top end here, we can see that these items that are actually good statted are going for multiple divines for a class that should otherwise be restricted. Worse yet, we can see right here, if we sort by armor, there is not a single one of these even surpassing 1,500 armor right now. I currently have a 2,000 armor thing on me. Many levels ago, back when I started mapping, where is it? I started with this item with 1,443 armor. This is an item that I got. Let me show this to you guys right here. This is an item I got at like level 70. I think it was literally level 70. This would still be one of the best items you could buy on the marketplace. In other words, there is not enough warrior gear dropping with the exact amount of specifications that you need, because you need strength, life, armor, more armor, resist, and resist. You must have exactly those stats for the gear to even be useful. There's simply not enough of it dropping, and the amount that does drop immediately is being picked up by all the players who actually want to continue to gear. New players, as of this point, have to effectively be far below resistance cap or be far below chaos resistance cap, because you're going to need double life, the strength, and the life just to function, which I will get into in a second. And also double armor is pretty good, otherwise armor is useless, because the less armor you have, the less useful it does. If you end up at low armor, you don't do anything. Okay. Gearing my warrior requires massive baseline amounts of currency and scanning the marketplace like a hawk for an item to even show up worth buying. Gearing my other characters, on the other hand, was quite easy, as I could easily skip life on some items and compensate with energy shields. This made it very cheap and easy to do. Some builds might not even need life, dramatically reducing the requirements. On my Witch Hunter, for example, I was able to reduce costs substantially by searching for gear without life and just sitting at a comfortable 2400. Although that might seem very squishy and one-shottable because my Witch Hunter is ranged and does not ever really feel the need to be attacked, so long as I played rituals carefully, my Witch Hunter actually died significantly less than my warrior. Yeah, I mean, with comparable levels of gear, my warrior would die practically every other map. In order to actually tank the content as a warrior, every single piece of gear needs to have armor flat, armor percent, life, strength, resist. Even with as weak as armor as life are right now, you can manage to tank the content within a hair's margin if you use perfect gear on every stat. Sorry if it's not, but that what I mean is that if you have basically any gear that isn't rolling extremely good, if you don't have a double armor, double life, double resist helmet, double armor, double life, double resist chest plate, movement speed, armor, double life, double resist boots, and then your gloves you kind of want like attack speed or on hit or something. So here we're giving up huge sacrifices, but at the very least we got double armor, or sorry, we got one armor, double life, resist. So basically you can sort of kind of tank the content, but even in my build I can get one shot all the time. Even in my build, and I need to skip every map, which dramatically increases the tankiness, or sorry, I should say that dramatically increases the damage of the enemies. Most warriors that I see are sitting at 3,000 to 4,000 life tops. So they're literally able to soak half as much damage as I am, and I can still get one shot. It's possible to tank the content as a warrior, to run up and actually soak hits, but as of right now, it is so very, 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 very difficult because your gear just has to be perfect. The difference between warriors and other classes is other classes can function without every piece of gear being best in slot. And by best in slot, I'm not literally referring to giga high roll best in slot, but I mean at least with like 5 out of 6 of the modifiers being on par and with them being pretty decent rolls on them. But warriors will instantly get one shot without best in slot gear. This is due to other classes either being ranged and therefore at far less risk of being hit, or warriors having long cast times that literally cannot avoid some AoEs, where the warrior must be capable of eating its damage to even use a big damaging ability. Now by that what I mean, if I fight a rare enemy and it has the purple orbs coming at me and a magma ball coming at me and doing an ice nova, I'm going to have to eat one of these. I cannot avoid the purple balls and the magma orbs and the ice nova and still get in to do damage on them. This means with 2 choices: hammer gods them from range, or manage to actually get tanky enough to eat one of the hits and charge up an attack to kill them. Now I personally can do that, and I've had to do that a lot, but other classes will never end up in a situation where they must soak up damage in order to deal damage back. The last issue is most enemies will never be able to hit a competent play with their attacks, as the enemies are slow and lack tracking. Warriors, on the other hand, have to run up to enemies and are the only class who actually gets hit by these easy to dodge attacks. So there are lots of enemies in the game right now who will run up and attack the player. Most range classes will never actually get hit by them. Most melee classes will in fact get hit by them. Even some of the range enemies like archers and the porcupine enemies, those will shred away range players, but most range players will kill them at range before they reasonably get shot back at. Warriors can't. They have to actually eat that damage. Now, there is a mental block that a lot of people need to get over. You look at me and you look at me with my shield and being all tanky and all that, and I need to tell you that I am not tankier than a ranged character. Something that a lot of people have a mental block at and don't like fully comprehend, they're not fully cognizant of the fact, is that in fact melee gives you no defensive advantages whatsoever over a ranged character. A properly geared character shooting enemies at range, be it a monk using his ice blast to shoot people at range, a ranger shooting them with a bow, a mage shooting them with sparks or anything like that, all of them, if properly itemized for, if properly geared for, if properly passive treated for, will be as tanky, but right now actually tankier than melee. Yes, there is no advantage for being melee. That means that yes, when you play these melee classes and you're trying to be tanky right now, you are left with only the choices of getting the best gear you possibly can get to ski tanky enough to be hit by these enemies. Now, developers have done a pretty decent job. I will admit, I will give the developers this one. Oops. They have done a pretty decent job nerfing most of the damage that's very unblockable. Things like the dropping meteor, things like the purple orbs. Those damages have come down over time so that you can reasonably try to tank through them. But the problem is most of this damage won't reasonably hit range characters, whereas it will absolutely obliterate melee. I saw lots of people complaining about the meteor drop enemy that was constantly killing range players. And the funny thing is, to me, is that once you realize that that's actually just the average damage of every single mage in the game, and warriors just have to get tanky enough to eat that damage for free. Like, they can't dodge that damage, you just have to eat that for free. But range players were losing their mind because they were getting killed by it. Now again, range players are literally tankier than melee right now, and melee has to get tanky enough to eat those. It's ridiculous. The current pass... okay. Lastly, due to everything I just said, warriors must get Giant's Blood to be able to use a shield for survivability. This also means skipping any piece of gear with strength could cause you to not be able to wield your weapons. You already need to stack strength to get survivability, but now you literally have no option if you even want damage. This means the only choice is to stack strength both from your gear and from the passive tree. Now let me put this into work. I currently have a 74% ingenuity. My gloves have 30 strength, my boots have 33 strength, this ring is 29 strength, this ring has 31 strength, my chest plate has 33 strength, and my helmet has 32 strength. The only pieces of gear without strength right now are my amulet, but I'm not really sure what I could do better on my amulet. It's pretty much an amazing one. My shield, which has rolled double armor, block chance, physical damage reduction, and double resist. So once again, we're not having any bad stats. And my weapon. Although my weapon might be able to have put the life per enemy killed into a different stat, at the end of the day, this does keep me alive because I AoE enemies and I heal back to full. So in other words, none of my gear is actually wasted. The only thing I'm wasting right now is the mana per enemy killed on my gloves. I have one single wasted stat on my entire gear roster. I want you to bear that in mind. I have one single wasted stat on my roster. And if I was to refund Polymathy, I would not be able to use my weapon anymore. Do you understand how razor thin this margin is? Do you understand how difficult it actually is to use these items? It is not free. You do not get it easily. It is quite difficult. I just have to emphasize that enough because a lot of people look at this and they say, well, couldn't you sacrifice one or two pieces? No, I literally could not sacrifice any gear. If I was to take off my belt, that goes useless. What can I take off here? I could sacrifice one single item of strength here and it would put me right next to it. And the only reason I can do that is because I have ingenuity. And ingenuity is effectively, as you can see here, giving me 50 strength due to increasing the strength on this ring and this ring. Now, I don't believe that your average warrior has a 74% ingenuity. I'm just going to say that. I don't think your average warrior has that. Okay. If you want to use a shield, then there is also no reason not to use Giant's Blood to do damage. Meaning if you wanted to do one-handed plus shield, you would also need to go Giant's Blood. Even warriors not using any attacks at all will need a two-handed weapon to continue to scale their damage, as two-handed weapons can get to +7 melee scale, while one-handed weapons can only get to 5. Meaning if you never used any attacks at all and you just ran around using totems and blocking, you would still, in that world, need to go Giant's Blood. And I do remind people, Giant's Blood is that you can wield two-handed weapons in one hand. You would still need to go Giant's Blood in this world. Okay, because you would still, unfortunately, need to get that +7 melee skill on a two-handed weapon rather than +5 melee skill on a one-handed weapon. You would still need to do that. You cannot avoid going Giant's Blood in the current setup. Now let's talk about Time Lost Diamond. Warriors have very little access to % life modifiers. They can either get it from their amulet or a mere 3% from their skill tree. If they choose to get it from their amulet, this, once again, puts huge burdens on warrior itemization, as it will cost massively to get another best in slot item. There is one place where warriors can choose to get it from though that also massively restricts build variety, and that is Time Lost Diamond. So let me explain what I mean. Currently in the tree there's a mere 3% increased life. That's it. That's all you got for warriors. You can of course get once it's properly qualityed and all that, up to 8%. I think it's up to 8% maximum life from your amulet. Now getting an amulet like this with double high life rolls and increased armor and elemental resist and fire resist and damage recouped as life there's not going to be many of these on the market, and the ones that are going to be going for probably at least a div. So this is not, again, another option that your early game warriors can choose to do. This is more of your late game warrior. Do I really feel as tanky as like a near perfect warrior? I'm not saying I'm literally perfect, but I'm like getting near perfect. And do I really feel that tanky to you? No. If I was playing any other class, I'd literally actually just be unkillable right now. I'd practically be able to face tank Zesht +4, really. But on a warrior, getting perfect gear kind of makes you, yeah, you're like almost tanky now. So this is going to cost a lot. This doesn't give very little. So where do warriors get their life from? Well, right here. Let me take this off here to show you. So this time lost jewel right here is giving me nearly, that is 600 life. Now, how do you get a time lost diamond? How do you get a time lost diamond? With skills and radius grant 1% increased life. Well, unfortunately, you need to go and you need to buy it off the marketplace. These will go for about, if you get a crap roll on the second stat, you can get it for 1 div. If you get a good roll on the second stat, we're talking 2 to 4 plus, okay? If I was to take off this and I was to take off this, and I was to miss 2 pieces of gear, all I've done is not bought a best in slot amulet, and all I've done is not bought a best in slot. That brings me down to a mere 5,000 life. We were talking about the difference of increasing my life by 20% by having 2 good items. Now, obviously, people do like feeling tanky and people do like feeling good, but it is a bit monstrous how little health actual warriors without best in slot gear have, and how even a few items being missing, because again, I do want to emphasize a few items being missing. You miss 1 or 2 pieces of gear, okay, and you can start having your life reduced tremendously. And I should also mention, you will need things like multiple jewel sockets. You will need things like best in slot amulets with an ingenuity, fixing your elemental resistances so you can afford to wear this health gear. You do need stuff like that. You will need, of course, I'll get into this later, but you're also going to need a second good shield for when you go with that build. It's, woof, okay. In order to properly use Time Lost Diamond, every warrior will generally have to path the same way, use the same passive skill nodes, as well as buy an item that will be very expensive early each season. Now, by that what I mean is that every single warrior at the start of every season is going to have to find a Time Lost Jewel. They're all going to be competing for it. Every warrior is going to be competing for the double resist, double armor, double health gear. Every warrior is going to be competing to get Time Lost Jewels. Every single warrior must get this to stop being one-shot. So if warrior was actually a good class and people actually wanted these items, this would be outrageously expensive. As for the time lost jewel, that gives 1% max life per small node and then 5% increased strength per big node. I've seen one of those ever hit the market and it went for 150 divs. So if you see those warriors over 7,000 HP, yes, good job, you bought them. Not exactly something I can do though on my spare time here. This also means until those items start getting spammed onto the market, only a few warriors will even be able to get enough life for it to matter. Meaning until we see these best in slot gears starting to show up on the market, until we start seeing people getting these time lost jewels, until we start seeing people getting these double health amulets, you just won't even see these items on the market, so you won't even be able to buy them. Once again, the class with by far the slowest clear speed needs another item to fix base issues with itself. Once again, warriors are expected to put down a ton of currency to buy even more expensive items. The class who currently has the slowest clear speed needs to, as we've seen with all their other issues, they have the slowest clear speed, but they will still need to constantly, and I mean constantly, be putting down tons of currency just to stop being one-shot. Now, does that seem fair that every other class can stop being one-shot just by base mechanics, but warriors need to like shovel all this gear down to just stop being one-shot? I don't think that's very fair to expect of the slowest clearing class. Worse yet, however, as I'm sure you started to notice, every warrior is starting to build their passive tree the exact same, in addition to pretty much the same exact items. Why is every warrior passive tree starting to look the same? No Giant's Blood means either a massive damage reduction or a massive survivability reduction. By that, if you don't go Giant's Blood, you either lose out on having two-handed weapons or you lose out on having a shield. Either of these options, bad two-handed weapons or a bad shield, renders you squishy. Now, of course, as you might have noticed here, we were also talking about these jewels right here, of which my jewels are pretty good. I've got some max fire resist jewels right here. We've got, I have another jewel over here with some strength, trying to strengthen me up. We've got another jewel over here, double damage, life regen, melee on hit. We got another jewel over here, corrupted, to have 5 applicable modifiers. So the amount of cost to get warrior into a decent position is insane. Let's just say that right now. No access to a ton of strength means you'll be too squishy and die in one hit and not be able to use Giant's Blood. So if you notice why everyone's pathing through here, why are we getting Blade Catcher 15% strength, 15 strength, and that modifier is pretty good. Why are we pathing through here? We need to get this strength. Why are we taking these ones over here? You guessed it, we're going to need that strength. Why are we going down here to Polymathy? You'll never believe it, we really need that strength. Why are we going over here? 3% max life. Why are we going over to Titanic? You'd never believe it, 5% more strength. Do you get the idea here? No Prism Guard means you will just explode to elemental damage and be unable to fully utilize a Time Lost Diamond. Of course, if you look at this Time Lost Diamond, it gives 1% increased max health to every small node. The best way to use that is right here, where there's a lot of small nodes right around it, where you can kind of just pick everything up. Of course here, Prism Guard gives you 5% elemental resistances and 1% to maximum elemental resist. That is quite powerful. The 4% damage is extra fire damage. That's from my Time Lost Jewel. In addition, all these little modifiers up here, they allow you to actually soak up elemental damage. Over here, we get rage when hit by an enemy, and we get increased armor per max rage. Over here, we get all these nodes. Basically, you're gonna have to take all of these, because if you don't take these, and you don't take these in this order, you will get one shot by elemental damage, and you won't have enough life to survive. So every single warrior is gonna have to set up a time lost diamond node or nodes over here just to get survivability. There's no other nodes I can think of that even come close. I don't think there's any other nodes. Maybe this one, if a shield and thorns build was good, maybe this one could be as good, but we're talking pretty not really a thing here. No blood magic means all the nerfs to your mana pool you have to eat to get enough strength means you'll find yourself constantly out of mana. As I did show down here, this is 7% reduced mana, 7% again, 7% again. We now have 21% reduced maximum mana, and then over here we have 31% reduced maximum mana. That's to get enough strength to even be able to use Giant's Blood, to get enough base HP. But as you can see right here, this now means that every single warrior is going into blood magic. Therefore, build variety has been crushed again. No polymathy means you will find yourself down hundreds of life, as well as be at constantly too low strength to use Giant's Blood. So, as I was mentioning earlier, even with ingenuity, even with every piece of gear having strength, even with all of this, if I went to refund my polymathy, I would still not be able to use my weapon. If I was to not use any of these points, I would need 25 more strength just to use my weapon. As you might imagine, this is not really something we can give up. Not really. We need it. We need all of it. No resolute technique means you will need to find absolutely best in slot gear that can fill all your survivability needs while also still fixing your accuracy. Meaning we need to find a best in slot weapon that has a ton of accuracy, a best in slot helmet that could also have a lot of accuracy, maybe some rings with accuracy, and then our gear would need to be even more amazing to compensate for the reduction of resistances we would have through giving up those stats. So maybe even 37, 34 resist here on this ring wouldn't be good enough. Maybe I need 40, 40. Maybe 18 elemental resist here isn't good enough. Maybe I need 20. Maybe 15 elemental resist wouldn't be good enough. We would need even better gear to cover the weaknesses of having to give up accuracy. And of course, resolute technique. Your hits can't be evaded, never deal critical hits. So we can ignore accuracy. But if we wanted to go without resolute technique, our gear would need to be insanely, No unbending means you will be constantly hit stunned, since you're the only class expected to be hit by attacks. So something that doesn't really get mentioned here is the increased stun threshold here again and again and again does in fact mean that if you do not go unbending and you do not have this massive increase to your hit stun, 60%, because you are the only class that needs to walk up to enemies and actually get hit, you will be constantly hit stunned by enemies. Even with Unbending over here, giving me 60% more stun threshold, and then even with Titanic here, giving me another 30% for 90% increased stun threshold, even with over 6,000 life, and your stun threshold is based on life. If I ever do a map where enemies do increased stun buildup, they will hit stun me with every 2 or 3 attacks. It gets really lame. So you don't really have a choice here as to what you can do. You can't just avoid every map. I can't avoid elemental weakness map, elemental pen map, double elemental damage map, chaos damage maps. I can't avoid stun buildup maps, reduce life recovery. I can't avoid every single map in the game. Like, I have to build around accepting that some maps will have to be run. This means there is very little room to deviate on Warrior. The base class is just so awful at everything, and the playstyle is so restrictive on its needs that basically every single Warrior paths the same way. You have to get Resolute Technique, you have to get the Time Lost Jewel area, you have to get Prism Guard, you have to run down here for Polymathy, you have to stack jewels because jewels are just that good, so we're stacking jewels everywhere. We need to get Brute Strength, we need to get Unbending, we need to get Titanic. Like, you need to get every single thing in the game on this class. There is also the issue of weapon sets. The best way to play Warrior is to have one weapon set to AoE and one weapon set to single target, with all the nodes taken to support either end. This means Warriors will need to have 2 top tier weapons and 2 really good shields. If you don't build and play like that, you will find yourself falling behind massively, even behind average strength builds. I don't even mean the good builds. Without AoE single target setup, you won't even be able to keep up with off meta builds. And by that, what I mean is that if you do not go with this double weapon setup, where one weapon grabs all the damage and one weapon grabs all the AoE with your weapon set, you can see up here, one weapon grabs the damage, one weapon grabs the AoE. You can see it down here, just everywhere. One weapon grabs AoE, one weapon grabs damage. Okay, do you guys get that? But because of that, that means you're gonna need 2 different weapons. An Expert Cultist Great Hammer and a Crumbling Maul. You're probably going to need 2 different weapons. You're also going to need 2 different shields to support those weapons. This is ludicrously expensive to set up. The only alternative is that you run a Stampede build. Stampede with Hammer of Gods can kill the rares, and then when you do a boss setup, you swap your shield and your weapon over to your weapon set 2 setup and use them like that. It's really janky. It doesn't feel good to do. It feels really stupid that, like, you're swapping, you're practically respecking every time you go to a boss. It feels really dumb. And if you don't do that, then you're gonna have to get 2 best in slot weapons. Yeah, it's very restrictive. It's very expensive. The devs have not thought this shit through. This means, once again, Warriors need to have even more items with even more currency demands than other classes. The weakest class in the game is also by far the most expensive to start actually playing with. The last issue, and definitely one worth discussing, is the item rarity issue. Warriors cannot possibly find good cheap item rarity gear, and get resistance capped to not be one-shot by elemental damage, and get chaos capped to not actually be one-shot by chaos damage, and to actually cast their abilities, because most chaos damage is avoidable. Chaos arrows will come down, or the chaos orbs come at you, and then you're expected to dodge out of the way. But you can't do that if you need to cast your abilities. So if you actually want to tank through this chaos damage and cast your abilities, you're going to be chaos capped. And you need to get enough strength to be able to use your weapons. If you want to do all this while also getting enough item rarity to actually get currency drops, you have to sacrifice one of these until later in the season. If Warriors choose to sacrifice item rarity, it just means they will now clear slower than other classes and get less currency while doing it, and need more currency to do their build. Warrior items need to be absolutely best in slot to fit everything. It is ridiculous. So with everything said, I hope everyone can understand why Warrior feels like a solved class and is very uncreative and, for many people, uninteresting to even play anymore. I hope developers can solve these issues. Some suggestions I do have: more flat life and strength on notables. Currently, there is no flat life in the game. Warriors have way too little flat life, and I suggest that Warriors get some flat life on their notables. Somewhere, anywhere. Get some strength on them for maybe. Split the Earth. Maybe we get 15 strength here. Skullcrasher. Maybe we get some flat life here. On the armor notables, maybe we get 15 life on heavy armor. Maybe we get 50 life on Made to Last. Blade Catchers, projectile bulwark is already pretty good, but maybe we could add 10 strength over there. Over here for polished iron, maybe we get 50 flat life. On sturdy metal, maybe we could get 15 strength, because that would increase the base life of warriors. Also, I think the amount of percent life in the tree should go up. Now, I do think flat life and percent life are good. I would like more flat life. I would like more percent life sparingly. Now, why would I want more flat life and flat strength? Because if we added more flat life and flat strength, I could maybe take off one piece of gear without instantly kerploding. If all we add is percent life, we'll run into the same issue, where taking off a single piece of gear could cause you to lose massive amounts of life. Because all the life right now in the game that's flat is coming from strength, or it's coming from your gear. So we want more percent life. Maybe this goes to 5%. Maybe we get 5% more health on Titanic. But at the end of the day, we need more flat life, so the base life of a warrior is good. And we need more percent life, so you aren't forced to do janky stuff like get Time Lost Jewel, get a perfectly amazing amulet. We don't want every single warrior to feel like they must go with the Time Lost Diamond node thing set up here. We don't want everyone having to do that. I think warriors also need a strong incentive to use one-handers late game to diversify the game. So one suggestion I did have is maybe in reaving. What we could do, maybe not in reaving, maybe somewhere around here, we could do a node where one-handed weapons get 10 or maybe 1% more damage for every 10 strength. Maybe something like that. So that way one-handed weapons could try to keep up a little bit better with two-handed weapons. Maybe something like that. Maybe we could even go with a more option. One-handed weapons get, let's say, 1% more damage per 20 strength, so that like as the game progressed and we got into a late game, that one-handed could keep up a little bit more. Because right now everyone having to get two-handed weapons means everyone is fighting for the exact same weapons. Nobody is going one-handed, and one-handed weapons aren't worth anything. Baseline survivability added to mace abilities. So as I'm sure you've noticed, if you try to use a mace ability, what's going to happen? You're dead. But imagine all these mace abilities with giant cast times had some damage reduction while you were casting it. I suggest that every single mace ability with a cast time, be it Sunder, be it Perfect Strike, be it any of these long abilities, even Leap Slam, I suggest all these abilities get a 30% damage reduction while casting and a 30% damage reduction for 0.5 seconds afterwards, so you don't randomly get hit right after an ability ends and end up dead. I think both these things would give a lot of survivability to warrior baseline, so that they keep up more with other classes and that you do not feel absolutely forced into doing nothing but stacking survivability the entire game just to repeatedly get one shot anyway, until you reach a threshold where you can AoE the entire map and beyond, at which point you're not really even playing warrior anymore. If my AoE hits the entire map and beyond, we're playing a mage. So that's my entire video. That's my thoughts on everything. Let me know about your thoughts. Let me know about the problems. These are just the problems I think are happening right now. Again, at the end of the video, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Give me your thoughts on this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, have a great rest of your day.